Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie if you're new here, and today I'm super excited to finally be sharing the Essie Wrapped in Luxury and Unguilty Pleasures collections. I'm so excited about these because they just are such perfect cozy shades for the winter time, and you know I love a whole cozy vibe. I'm going with like the comfy sweater, I have sweats on, my hair's in a messy bun, like we're just being comfy, cute, and cozy today. So I'll save my thoughts for the end of the video. Let's just get into the swatches. Starting with Wrapped in Luxury, the first polish is Sleigh It, which is described as a warm, mid-tone gray polish with brown undertones. So I really don't think that I agree with how Essie described this shade. To me, it looks a lot more brown than it does gray, and I don't think that I would call this a warm kind of shade either. It just looks very cool tone to me, but I'm curious to know what you think of the description. But either way, I was really blown away by this polish, and I actually still do really like the color despite the inaccurate description. It is just such a cozy brown for the season. I don't know, I never really thought I would be super into cool tone browns. I only have like one other one in my collection, but I'm really happy to have this one. Next up we have Midnight Delight, which is this warm cognac shade with neutral undertones. So at first I thought this one was more of like a camel kind of brown, which honestly isn't really my favorite shade of brown, but it also really reminds me of caramel too, so that makes me like it a little bit more. This one had another flawless formula, as you just saw, where the first coat was basically opaque, but I still did do 2 coats out of habit. But yeah, I'm still pretty undecided about this one. I feel like I like it the least, and I likely wouldn't wear this as a full manicure, but I'm sure it would be super cute in nail art. The next polish is Not So Silent Night, a warm bronze metallic with flecks of refined gold pearl. So unsurprisingly, the formula on this one, like most other metallics, was really opaque, and you can see more of that gold pearl shimmer once it's applied, so it gives it a little extra warmth and dimension. I've mentioned this before, but I'm not usually a fan of metallics, especially as a full manicure, but I think this one would be so beautiful in some nail art. Up next, we have the namesake of the collection, Wrapped in Luxury, which is a rich burgundy red with blue undertones, or in other words, a pretty true berry red kind of shade. This one definitely reminds me of cranberries or something. It's just such a warm and cozy red for the holidays. This is the only polish that I felt wasn't as creamy as the other ones, so it definitely needs at least a second coat to be fully opaque, but I think that's pretty common for deeper reds like this to just have that kind of almost crelly kind of formula. Either way, this one just feels like such a classic to me, but I'm curious to know if you prefer deeper reds like this one or more bold cherry reds. The next polish is Head to Mistletoe, which is described as a metallic sage green with flecks of refined gold pearl, like in Not So Silent Night, except I personally feel like this one includes some gold flakies and not just the gold shimmer. So I do appreciate a metallic green in this shade, and again, the addition of the gold pearl effect makes it really unique, but I'm still not sure if I actually like this one since, again, I'm just not super crazy about metallic manicures. I think this definitely would make a great accent nail though, and the formula is perfect for nail art. I don't think I grabbed enough polish on the first coat, so I had a weird kind of bald spot near my cuticle area. So here I'm doing a second coat just to make it fully opaque. And it does look a little bit brushstrokey as I'm applying it, but I feel like after a while those kind of fade away. So that's definitely a plus. But yeah, I'm super curious to hear what you think of this shade because it's certainly unique. And rounding out the collection is Carols and Caviar, which I think is the crowd favorite from this collection since it was sold out for the longest time, at least on Beyond Polish. This one is described as a cool blackened gray with blue undertones, but I definitely would have just called this a charcoal navy blue. This one is definitely my favorite from the collection. These deep blues just really call to me in the winter, and I'm just so happy to have this one in my collection. As you saw in the first coat, I did kind of have some streaks and bald spots here and there, so I don't think it was really the formula, it was more so my application. Maybe this one is a little bit more crelly than the others, but it's not anywhere near the red, for example. Either way, 2 coats of this is just absolutely flawless, and I cannot get over the shade of gray blue. The next shade is No To Do, which is described as a deep coffee brown with red undertones. I think I would call this one more of a chocolate brown than a coffee brown, but it is really warm either way, and it just gives me such cozy vibes. Like, how do you not see milk chocolate looking at this shade? It's so delicious. And like the other polishes, this one also had a creamy formula, but I still did do 2 coats for full opacity. And this is definitely another one that I'm sure most people would probably just associate with a fall color, but I kind of just really like browns as well in January, maybe because it's Capricorn season and it's just another kind of grounding earth tone kind of shade, but I love this one. Next up we have Snooze In, which is described as a warm pinky coral with yellow undertones. I think it's picking up a little brighter on camera, but yeah, I think I've come to learn that yellow undertones just don't suit my skin tone. So while in theory I do love this shade, I don't think that I love it on me. It could also be the lighting, but yeah, I just didn't end up loving it as much as I thought that I would. And for what it's worth, I feel like I should mention that this shade looks a lot more coral on Essie's website. I personally see it as a pale kind of peachy shade. But aside from that, this one had the same great formula that was opaque on 2 coats. And I'm looking forward to at least trying this one again in a couple of months, just to see if I like it anymore, or at least use it in some nail art. The next polish is Caught in the Rain, which is described as a muted neutral sage green with gray undertones. So this one is probably my absolute favorite from the collection, but again, it's really hard to pick. I just really love sage greens, and the gray undertones in this one are just perfect for these colder months. This had the same buttery smooth formula that was super full coverage on the first coat, but again, I still did 2 out of habit. So for whatever reason, I think this is the only shade that kind of dried down a little darker than it looks in the bottle. At least it seemed more noticeable on the first coat, but I still absolutely love this one and just can't recommend it enough. Next up we have the namesake Unguilty Pleasures, which is this rich teal green with blue undertones. So don't mind my first coat and how it looks a little marbled. I didn't realize the pigment was a little separated, but I just had to shake it up and it was perfectly fine for the second coat. But aside from that, as you saw, this formula was just so incredibly smooth to apply and so rich and full coverage that I think this is another one you could get away with 1 coat, especially if your nails are shorter. I love a good teal, and this one just feels like the perfect hue for winter, where it's not as vibrant and ever so slightly deeper, but still is a bright pop of color for these winter months. And rounding out the collection, we have To Me From Me. This is a gorgeous, softened, deep indigo with white undertones, according to Essie's website. I personally wouldn't say this is indigo because I really don't think it leans purple at all. It reads like a very true blue to me. And I also never heard of a polish being described as having white undertones, so let me know if that's new for you too. Either way, this one is, surprise, another favorite because I just love a good slate blue. I just can't get enough of these for the season, and this just had another flawless formula. So yeah, I just love this. Let me know if you do too. Now for comparisons, I actually don't really have anything in my collection dupe worthy to Home by 8, so I wanted to show it next to a few that I thought would be similar, starting with Olive Ave Pebble, which as you can see is much lighter and also more purple leaning. Since the Essie leans a little more brown, I figured I can show it next to Olive Ave Volcanic, but then you see just how purple the Essie leans. So it's a pretty unique shade in my collection. Lastly, I also thought I would show it next to OPI's Brown to Earth, which, yes, is another brown, but they're at least a little bit more similar in terms of how dark these are. And while I don't have these next two in my collection, I think this could be a dupe or at least much closer to shades like Generation Zen, which is apparently discontinued, and the very classic shade Smokin' Hot. Next up for No To Do, I again wanted to show this one next to Volcanic just for some reference so you can see how warm the Essie actually is. I also had Cirque's Terroir, if I'm pronouncing that right, which I thought might be similar, but you really see how much lighter it looks, especially once it's on the nail, so sadly, no dupes here. For Snooze In, I wanted to show it next to Dimension Nails Emu because it's the closest I have to this muted, peachy coral kind of shade. But as you can see, Dimension Nails is a lot brighter, especially on the nail. It's actually kind of crazy to see how darker the Essie shade dries down. But yeah, unfortunately, I also think this Dimension Nails shade was recently discontinued, so no dupes. Next for Caught in the Rain, I knew I had to show this next to Olive Ave Zinc from the fall collection, which was probably my favorite shade from that lineup. And I'm honestly so surprised to see how different these ended up being. Zinc looks way darker than I remembered, but I still absolutely love both of these shades so much. So let me know if you have a favorite out of these two. For Unguilty Pleasures, I wanted to show a quick bottle comparison to Garden Variety from the Flowerista collection because it was just one of my favorites, but as you can see, they're not dupes at all. So for more of a dupe, I have Loud Lacquer's Belladonna, which I shared as one of my favorites going from summer to fall, but it ends up being a lot more green and a lot brighter on the nails too. So these are not dupes, but still really great teal kind of shades. And lastly, for To Me From Me, I wanted to quickly do some bottle comparisons to Transcend the Trend from their fall collection because I thought that they were more similar. It is a lot brighter, but not as bright or as teal as Unguilty Pleasures. I do really like this lineup though. I feel like it would make such a fun ombre. For more of a dupe, I thought Olive Ave Cerulean would really be spot on, but again, it's just so much lighter, especially on the nail. So I thought maybe Spirulina would actually be closer, but it's actually a little too dark and a little bit more grayed out. So yeah, these are all pretty unique blues, at least to my collection. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for the Essie Wrapped in Luxury and Unguilty Pleasures collections. As always, I can't wait to hear what you think about these collections. I know the Wrapped in Luxury is a little bit of old news since it was for the winter/holiday this past season, but I still really enjoyed them and I did like the colors a lot, but I know some people kind of thought they were basic or a little boring. One of my best friends actually was saying that it reminded her of the fall collection, but just like darker, which I can see, but again, I kind of like those basic shades, so I didn't find them, you know, boring at all, but I'm curious to know what you think. But I'm definitely more of a fan of the Unguilty Pleasures collections. Honestly, I think it's because it reminds me of two of my favorite Essie collections of all time. The first one being Flowerista from like 2014 or something crazy. And then the second one was the Mindfulness collection, which was a little bit more recent, but still kind of old, I guess. Those two were just such beautiful lineups for me, and I feel like this is just such a perfect combination of like soothing blues and greens, but they're still bright and offer that pop of color. But then there's also the kind of muted, neutral, comforting shades that are just so perfect for this time of year. So I'm a big fan of this collection, and I just can't wait to hear what you think. I mean, either way, I think Essie has just done an amazing job with their formulas, because they were god awful like years ago when they had the skinny brush that was the worst, and this like watery thin formula. So it's been a while, I feel like, since I've, you know, regularly used Essie. So just getting to use these back to back, it's just so satisfying. Like, I'm wearing one coat on my nails and it's like, I can get away with it. You know, it's not perfect, but it's just so impressive to me how much they've improved their formula. So I'm excited about that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other collections they're going to be coming out with this year. But as always, leave me any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.